round of a fantastic tournament that broke the odds by Sure, some people might say that it's late, but daylight savings day saves the day. That being said, thank you also very much to two friends inside opposition. I hope that you guys will like the case, and Jason, we're being just a phenomenal partner. This is the first time that we will have won this case, and I actually lost it. So a lot of our prep time is just spent like running after it. So this will be interesting. All right, let's imagine that you're establishing an ethical religion. In other words, a religion that's going to choose what right ethics are. Okay? Up choice. Should you suggest that man is naturally good by nature, or that man is naturally sinful by nature? Now, before they choose, let me tell them this. Your goal is to expound a religion that's existentially compelling. It makes you want to act in accordance with its dictates, and also philosophically coherent, given the realities of human life. A caveat is that the ethical dimension itself is constant. This is just a question of what the nature of man is. Okay? So, up choice.
Sure. So, like, if the nature of man is good, you can still do immoral things, right?
Like, if you're teaching an ethical religion, you can say that even if man is naturally good, sure, you can still do immoral things. Yes.
Good.
Good. Okay. Very interesting. It's interesting that there's actually no religion in the world that teaches man is naturally good.
Work against, but they should.
We'll see. So the first point that Jason and I would like to talk about is the idea of the limits of man. And our first subpoint is this. Recognize that God is perfect, magnificent, and eternal, while man is by definition imperfect, temporal, and limited. Why does man need religion? I think that the answer is because we're out of touch with what this perfect essence of God is. Because we see suffering all around us, and we see man being very, very inhumane to the different men that are around us, and it's difficult for us to comprehend. So what Jason and I are saying is, the reason is because man isn't perfect. By our very nature, man has a sort of frailty. We think that we're inclined to sin, and that's why we see these different things that are around us. So why is religion important? Because we believe on our side of the house we need someone to look up to. And on our side of the house, religion takes on a very unique definition as sort of a bastion of the good. Why is it good for a religion to expound that man is naturally bad? Because the only way to get in touch with the good is through that religion. This is what cures you of the frailty that you sort of have in your soul. And I'm going to give sort of the definition of health here, right? If I have someone that is always inclined to getting sick and gets sick again and again and again and again, Jason and I would say that that man is by nature like naturally frail, right? And I think that's exactly how man is. Very often they are inclined to sin in all these like terrible things that we see in society around us. So how do we cure that frailty? By realizing that there is a God that's there, that's like a medicine for us toward that frailty that we can be looking toward, which is very, very important. But the next thing that we have to talk about under the idea of the limits of man is that the idea of innate sin leads to a unique existential sort of a religion. I'm going to talk a little bit about Kierkegaard here. All right? It's not just a matter of us acting in a certain way because we don't know what's for the best. We need more than just to know how to act good. We need a spontaneous leap of faith to put the Holy Spirit in us. Because recognize on your side of the house, and this is a problem with people like Rousseau that try to expound like people being naturally good. The problem is that if you're just naturally good and you don't need the religion to redeem you, that whole religious element, it might as well be a pagan philosophy, right? That teaches me like what like good actions are in different situations. Where is the religious element specifically? And that is what Kierkegaard talks about, the spontaneous leap of faith with God. This realization that on my own, without the religion, guess what? I'm limited, I'm frail, I'm mortal, and God is greater than me, more perfect than me. But if I have this spontaneous leap of faith, I bear myself into the arms of God, and through that very action, through the leap of faith, I'm really becoming like the more religious person. Sure.
So you say that like man is born good. In our case, like you don't need to do anything to be redeemed. But that's only true if you die when you were born. Life is complicated and difficult. May you not need a guide to lead you through the path of sin to redemption?
Right, but specifically we think that that guide should be the religion because you're very frail and you keep falling into error on their side of the house. Look to what he just admitted to. Man keeps falling into error through life and keeps doing very bad things. He was actually conceded the case by admitting that man was by nature very, very frail and is always inclined to do very bad things. Well, gee, that's exactly what we're saying. Because man is naturally frail, you need the spontaneous leap of faith to put yourself in the eyes of, in the arms of God. So thank you very much for that. Right? So the next thing that we want to do, Jason and I want to talk about, is the idea of the nature of sin itself, right? So the first thing that we have to say is that if we're naturally sinful, or if our religion teaches that we're naturally sinful, we need a constant vigilance and care. Hence, a good dimension for ethics. Think of the example of like Christian ethics. Because man is like by nature like this evil, first of all, it's very important to take on the religion because by taking on the religion, I have the ability to redeem myself. That draws people to the religion, right? Which is pretty important. But secondly, if I'm frail and always inclined towards sin, I have to be really, really careful all the time that I'm not going to be falling into sin, because by nature I'm sinful. So how am I going to be very careful all the time? By submitting to the religion, right? And you can see why outside the house this is a great thing for a religion to teach, because it encourages people to be very, very dedicated toward that religion, right? So again, the next thing that Jason and I have to say under the idea of the nature of sin is that, naturally, man is naturally and spontaneously good. Where is the sin necessarily coming from, right? He even kind of alluded to this on his side of the house when he said life is full of all these different problems. It's full of problems, again, possibly what I already said, because we believe that man is feeble. There's always the possibility of sin coming in unless you take on the religion. So this is really a call for people to be taking it on. You can really see why this would be a good thing for a religion to teach, right? And the next thing that we have to say is it makes sense that we're naturally sinful, because we see people sinning everywhere, right? But I actually think that if we say sin is natural, it's kind of liberating, because it's saying, look, you're only human. At the end of the day, you're not God, and it is natural for you to be sinning. But we give you a very unique benefit. You can liberate yourself through faith from this pattern of sin that you're seeing all around you, right? Saying that like it's unnatural makes men really sad everywhere, because if men are so naturally good, why is there so much evil in the world? And it's really a real conundrum on their side of the house, right? So the last thing that we want to talk about is the idea of this religious necessity. Because we think that on our side of the house, there's more of a necessity of accepting the religion. Because without it, you're in really big trouble. Because recognize what I said about like the pagan philosophy, right? There has to be a unique religious element to this. And Jason and I give you a very unique religious element in that we speak to the importance of submitting to the divine, submitting to God, having this existential wonder of something that's actually above us. We can't just, be good by necessarily doing good. We need this belief and this act of faith to redeem our souls of something. And what are we redeeming our souls of? This natural frailty, this sinfulness. We need that leap of faith, and we need the religion around us all the time. And the next thing that we have to say is this. No religion in the world teaches that man is naturally good. Because the whole point of any religion is that you need to correct for something that's fundamentally wrong in your soul, right? Through a covenant, through an ethical code, through whatever, but the slate needs to be corrected. So ultimately, I want to remind everyone in the round of this. The op can't get up here and say, man is just a clean slate. It could go either way. It was an op choice case. Not is man bad or is man a clean slate. Is man naturally sinful or is man naturally good? If they have to uphold the other side of the house, man is naturally good, then why are they sinning all the time? And if they're sinning all the time, that suggests frailty. But if they're frail, then they're naturally sinful. We're very proud for the first time today to propose. Here, here. 7.
All right, I thank the Prime Minister for his very eloquent remarks. And now I call upon the Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Robert Glunt. Here, here.
Mr. Speaker, everyone in this panel, everyone in this most august house, really good friends here on side government for a very interesting case. I really like this one. It doesn't involve guns and hobos. And it's a fantastic speech in MO. I assure you that. The first thing I want to talk about is a bit of an overview, and it's the notion of limitation, right? Because I don't think on our side of the house we have to defend that man is always good, that every single man you run across is definitely going to be a total saint, right? We talk about when a man is inherently good. So in the same way, on their side of the house, they're not defending that every single man is totally immoral and there's nothing you can do to change him. I think it's reasonable on our side of the house to defend that man may be inherently good, but people do stray from that inherent goodness. In the same way that we would say that man is inherently rational, he has an inherent ability to think and to reason, but some people are more rational than others, and people need to develop that sort of reason through learning and understanding and philosophy. We think that it's reasonable to assume that man is inherently good, but there are certain things which can lead him to be less good, and he needs to develop that goodness through this kind of philosophy. We think that it is better for a religion to say that if something has to be evil, because there has to be evil in the world, the problem of evil really does talk to one of the major problems that religion has. Like, where does evil come from? Where is evil in the world? If you believe in a creator God, you believe that there is something that created the universe, something that you need to follow, something that you need to talk about. So it had to have created the evil in the first place. You can believe that either the world is evil, and the world tempts man to evil, or that mankind is evil, and that mankind is inherently evil, and the world doesn't have any sort of bearing on it. I think it is far better to believe in a God which created man good and had a world that might lead him to temptation than a God that created man evil and had him set loose upon the world. I don't think that's the sort of thing they want to defend. No, thank you. But that's the first thing I want to talk about here is the nature of God. Why should I worship a God that creates evil creatures? I don't know why I should follow your religion necessarily if you're asking me to worship a deity or school of thought or some sort of other moral principle which created these evil creatures and let them loose on the earth, right? If man is inherently evil, I don't see any reason why I should subscribe to a philosophy that's put forth by the evil creator of this man. But the The second thing I want to talk about here is why treat people good at all, right? Because understand that if I have to interact with my neighbors, I have to interact with my friends, some of them are going to be bad, some of them are going to be immoral. On our side of the house, we say they have an innate moral goodness. There is some good part of them, even if they become really wicked, really terrible. We think it's good to actually avow that philosophy for a couple of reasons. Number one, it teaches that everyone could possibly redeem, right? If they have an inherent predisposition to good, I think you have to accept that everyone could become good eventually. Like, no matter how bad the world is made to them, they have inherent goodness in their soul that could actually be redeemed. The second thing we'd say is, if you believe that people are inherently good, that gives you a reason to treat them well, right? If you believe on their side of the house that people are inherently evil, why should I be moral to them in the first place? If my neighbors, if my friends, if they behave badly, why should I treat them with respect? Why should I treat them with dignity if they're just inherently evil creatures, right? If like we had a monster come in this room that like wasn't human and like was really terrible and wicked and immoral, I don't see why we would treat that creature with like morality. I think we try to shoot it and put it down. That's something we don't want to defend about humans. Sure.
Like on all Christianity, right? And on all Christian ethics that teach that man is like has innate evil, but it's important to like extend our arms to them as brothers so that they'll accept the reality of the religion.
Firstly, I'm Protestant. I don't buy this original sin bullshit. I know we're human, but like quite honestly, there are Christian religions that don't teach that man is inherently evil. But I think that even Catholicism, which does teach that man does have some kind of original sin that he has to atone for, doesn't teach that man is inherently evil. Just that man comes with like some sin on him in the first place, right? I think it's different to say that man has some sin he needs to make up for than to say that man has this innate predisposition to be wicked and to be awful, because that really speaks volumes about the Creator who created him so wicked and so awful. That's not something you want to actually find. But the third thing I want to talk about is this notion of identity, right? Because if you're actually talking about a religion that's going to speak to the masses and going to convince people to like actually convert to this religion, I think it's kind of shitty to tell them that they're inherently evil, they're wicked creatures. Like, that doesn't make me want to adhere to your philosophy. They said it needs to be existentially compelling, right? And you want to convince people to actually adhere to this religion. I think telling them they're terrible creatures who can maybe someday be sort of moral but don't actually have any innate goodness to them doesn't actually tell them there's something they want to believe in. I don't want to believe that people are inherently immoral, and if I don't want to believe that people are inherently immoral, I'm not going to want to believe your religion necessarily either, right? I think people have an innate predisposition to try to think of themselves as moral creatures. If you tell them that yes, you are a moral creature, but you need some sort of like cultivation in order to become more moral, I think that's very appealing. Coming to me and say, Rob, you know, you did all these immoral things, you're a really immoral person, and like inherently you're immoral, doesn't make me want to follow your religion or believe what you say. I think this is far more appealing. But the next thing we want to talk about is the notion of forgiveness, right? Because we think that any good religion, and like, you know, I'm predisposed here toward Christianity, right? But that a good religion would teach the virtues of forgiveness. And I think that one of the whole points of forgiveness, one of the reasons that you actually like do forgive people, even though they do terrible things to you, even though they do immoral things to you, is because you believe that, sorry, like they're not inherently wicked, they're not evil creatures, but they just made a mistake, right? That any sort of moral defect, any sort of moral harm, any sort of wickedness, no matter how terrible, is the product of a mistake. It's not the product of an evil soul. It's not a product of something that can't actually be redeemed. It's merely the world that's tricked them. It's merely the product of their circumstances, their surroundings, and they actually can be redeemed from that. I think you need to teach people that you should forgive these people because people are inherently good. The next thing I want to talk about there is the notion of babies and children, right? Because it seems a little crappy to argue that little babies are evil, right? That would seem to justify that, like, maybe you shouldn't treat them very well. I think a society should treat children with, like, a certain amount of respect and a certain amount of regard. It's really crappy to say that little babies are inherently evil. No thanks. The last thing I want to talk about before I go case side, can I get a time signal, Dave? Yeah. 4 minutes? Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is that a lot of the sort of philosophies that they talk about have been used in the past to justify racism, and that's not so hot, right? If you see that some people are breaking the law all the time, if you see that some people are acting immorally all the time, and your interactions with them are highly negative, you might think to yourself, you know, maybe God put a little bit more evil into that ethnicity. These are the sorts of arguments that people had been making. They said that people were black because they were cursed by God. They said that the Jews were like cursed to wander the world because they indulged in money lending, because they indulged in usury. These sorts of racist sort of doctrines were in Christianity for a long time. You don't want a religion that actually adheres to those sorts of things. That said, let's talk about the points that they bring up. The first thing they say is that there are limits. Man is not perfect, and like a person who is constantly immoral we would describe as being sick, in the same way that a sick person is very sickly. Firstly, I would say that even a person who is very sickly is not inherently sick. Sick is a condition which says that your body is not working properly. To say that a person's sick sort of implies that that's not how their body is supposed to be working in the first place, right? Like, maybe if they have a genetic defect, that's one thing, right? Like if their body just doesn't process lysine properly or something like the animals in Jurassic Park. But like, honestly, the fact that man is not perfect doesn't mean that there isn't some perfection that man could strive for. I don't think it's reasonable for them to argue that just because man is not perfect, that he's inherently evil. No, thank you. They also talk about a leap of faith. You want to teach that your religion is necessary. But honestly, Mr. Speaker, in the same way that, like, I think education is necessary for a person to develop rationality, we can say that this religion is necessary for them to develop their own innate moral sense. I don't think it's that bad necessarily to argue that humans are inherently moral, but the world tends to tempt them toward bad things. The world tends to make them into evil people, rather than arguing necessarily that people are inherently immoral, and somehow they came up with this religion which makes them good. That seems very suspect to me. The next thing they talk about is the nature of sin. Again, they say if you want to prove that your religion is necessary, see the argument that I made before, that like your religion will still be necessary on both sides of the house because man may typically be sinful. Like the average guy you come across may be sinful, but that doesn't mean that he is inherently sinful. And so long as man is sinful, he does need a moral code, he does need a moral work ethic. They also talk about like where does sin come from? What is the necessity of accepting this sort of thing? I said again before, like the necessity of accepting this is because it's very difficult to live a moral life without having religion, in the same way that it's difficult to live a rational life or an intelligent life without any sort of learning or understanding. And the last thing they say is that no religion teaches that man is inherently good. Firstly, I talk about Protestantism, which has also occurred to me is there's some sects of Mahayana Buddhism which also teach that like babies have this innate Buddha nature, so like people are inherently good or have the inherent capacity for enlightenment. Bonafel, you read about this stuff, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we think that religion could teach that man is inherently morally good, but also just the mere fact that they don't exist in the status quo is an argument against it. We think you should teach that man is good because if a man is good, that means that he does have the capacity for redemption, that you should treat him good because he is good. That's a moral sense that everyone can understand. For all these reasons, we oppose.
I'd like to thank Robert Glunt for his very eloquent remarks. I'd like to thank Anna Bonafel for backing him up. And I'd like to now call upon the Honorable Member of the Government, Mr. Jason Wen, to deliver the next constructive speech of the round, not to exceed 8 minutes.
Here, here, here. Jason Wen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for recognizing me. His entire house will stay in this long to watch us round running an excellent tournament. True friends, Also, I want to thank this camera because the last time that camera documented how we beat them very badly. About how we were sent. That being said, that being said, now I'm usually not the expert, and it's pretty surprising that you might find that I'm going to run a religion case with David because this isn't really my strong suit. But I think I'm going to bring like an additional light to this argument. The first thing that I want to talk about, the first thing that Rob talks about. He says, look, people are inherently good, and they can simply stray from goodness. Now, that sort of begs the question, right? Like, we haven't really settled, are you inherently good or inherently bad? We're talking about what should you teach. But I think a more logical and reasonable assumption to make is that people are sort of inherently rational, and they make decisions based on the fact that they are rational. But what is the logical conclusion of rationality? A lot of times, people, through rationality, decide to act out of self-interest and to go out there and do things that might be good for themselves, but not good for others, and that's sort of a general definition of what evil is. But on top of that, the reason we sort of create religion and decide to obey religion is that through our own rationality, we've concocted a system in which we're trying to correct that sort of inherent badness that's associated with rationality that would put you down that particular path. I think that's a very strong argument based on the rationality assumption that says you're inherently evil, it should be teaching that, and you're correcting that path by saying that this is what we would do rationally. Sure.
Hey Jason, I know that you really like economics, but are you actually telling me that morality is irrational?
No. Look, what you're first of all saying is that everyone inherently is moral and everyone's going to carry out exactly what they should do. Rationality tells you what people would do in certain circumstances, right? Like generally we assume like people who are rational, what would they do? By your argument, we wouldn't need religion, we wouldn't need any sort of philosophy. People rationally would do the moral thing all the time, but that's clearly not the case. Let's look at the first argument, the second argument that he gives you. He says, look, how did we create the evil? Did God have to create the evil somehow? I think this is a silly argument. First of all, there is this idea of there possibly being a natural evil, right? Look at the examples of religion that talk about original sin. It's very conceivable that you could talk about some evil that does exist. But furthermore, we're not really getting into a descriptive debate, right? Like we're not talking about is man naturally evil, is man naturally good. What we're talking about is what we should prescribe. In other words, what would be the best thing for a religion to teach? It's not an argument of fact and looking at evidence to say what exactly man actually is. If we're looking at what the religion should teach, we should focus, for example, on arguments on what are the good things for a religion. And if you say that religion sort of teaches you that people need to be corrected, in other words, they're naturally bad, then that sort of is an incentive. It's a good thing for your religion because it creates a huge incentive for people to join your religion because that is the path to righteousness. That's the path that's going to save you and correct you from your naturally bad ways. The second argument, the third argument that they talk about is that, look, you
could become good eventually, and that's good. You want to teach that people are naturally good, because that means they could become good eventually. It's kind of silly, right? Like, they're naturally good. What do you mean, like, they need to become good eventually? The whole point is that if you want to teach that people could become good eventually, then you assume that there are flaws inherent within those individuals to begin with. That's sort of like, that argument is sort of self-defeating for this time. The whole point is, you can still become good naturally on our side of the house, and it's much more plausible. If you start off having these flaws, and you teach that people are bad, and they need to join your religion, have this leap of faith, then that's a huge reason to believe that the religion is teaching that the way to become good is by looking at our religion, looking at the ethical commandments within our particular religion. I think this is a very clear argument. Then they say, you give more reason to treat people well if you assume that they're naturally good. I think this is just patently false for several reasons. First, I will suggest that the human-monster analogy isn't really the same, right? Like, one, we assume humans are rational, monsters aren't. Go back to my rationality argument. Even if the human is rational and sort of making incorrect decisions based on some rational calculus, we want to sort of incentivize that individual to correct those particular decisions. The second thing I want to talk about is that you can still confer value to individuals, even if they are inherently bad or inherently flawed. The whole point is, just because someone is by nature bad is not an excuse to treat them badly. In fact, it's an argument the other way around. If they're naturally bad, the whole point of religions that teach people are naturally bad is that you want to try to save those individuals, and in fact, you have a greater altruistic obligation to those individuals because you have this high moral concern for those people, because you want to help save them from a path that's going to lead to destruction. Finally, I would suggest, look at the frailty example. If you have people who are consistently sinning, it sort of indicates that people are by natural frail and flawed, and sort of gives, like, what we're arguing is that it's actually good because you're saying individuals are not God, individuals are naturally imperfect, and what our religion does is sort of give individuals an opportunity to redeem themselves from their naturally flawed sins. The fourth argument I think he talks about is that it's pretty shitty to tell people that they're naturally evil. First of all, I say, that's a huge incentive for people to join your religion. In order to come with it, you should join your religion. You're founding this ethical religion. You want people to follow your ethical paths. This is one way in which you can get people to convert to it.
Sure. I mean, not that a religion is like a debate team. Do you really think of the Harvard debate team that said to you, Jason Wen, Jason Wen, you are inherently awful at debate. But if you come to us, maybe we can make you a little bit better. That would have convinced you to join the team. Wouldn't have been better to say, you're inherently kind of good at this, but if you come to join our team, you can get much better.
Are you kidding me? If I don't join the debate team, you know, I have more time on the weekends. If I don't correct my flawed ways, I go to hell. I think it's pretty different. On the one hand, giving people this huge incentive to correct themselves, to correct their nature, so they can have a good attitude, so they can have a good redeeming life. I think it's just silly to compare life to, you know, being on the debate team. Maybe that's how much you value it. But not that. Here. The next argument is a good religion teaches forgiveness. Why? I don't think so, right? In fact, forgiveness is all about, even though that you're by nature flawed and you're going to commit all these bad acts, we're going to forgive you by trying to convince you to convert to our religion so we could save you and teach you to move to the path of righteousness. In fact, that's an argument for us. Next, they say, the world has tricked these people, right? After all, they're not bad, the world has just tricked them. But this argument also works for us, right? Because the whole point is, if you're so frail, if you have this terrible immune system, and you're always being tricked by the world, and people are sinning consistently, that's an argument for why people are inherently flawed and are so susceptible to the forces of society. The argument here is that the way to correct that is by going to this particular religion. By going to this religion, you correct those flawed ways, and you're no longer susceptible to all these problems of society. That goes along with my rationality argument. If people are always self-interested in looking at the forces in society that push towards their own self-interest, this is an argument of why when you're creating a religion, you're trying to steer people away from that particular religion. The final thing they talk about is, look, this kind of religion would justify racism because it will teach certain people because of the color of their skin is bad. Why? We don't have to use this religion and make it a racist religion, right? That everyone starts off as inherently flawed, not just Jews, not just white, not just perfect. Great. Let's look at the independent points of David gives you, because I think it's grossly underaddressed, and like a lot of the responses are already applicable from the stuff I've already said. The first thing we talk about is the limits of man. Now, people are not perfect. The only way they address the sick response is that if you're sick, it doesn't mean you're by nature sick, but I've already addressed this. If you're always falling sick, it means you have a terrible immune system. That implies that you have a flawed human nature, and that actually needs to be corrected. It's not like you occasionally get sick, right? We see people sinning all the time. It's not occasionally they stray from the right path because of social forces. They do it all the time because of the forces of rationality that are inherent within our human nature. That's why it's an argument, the rationality argument, and these forces of nature argument are arguments for saying why people are inherently flawed. Then we talk about how, we give you the health example, but David goes on to talk about Kierkegaard, and people, laugh because it's, it's sort of an esoteric philosopher, but I think it's an important argument he's making here. What Kierkegaard is saying is that Rousseau is incorrect in assuming everyone is by nature good. And the way to sort of go from the bad to the good is you need a leap of faith. And I think that's very inherent in a lot of religions, and I think it's a good thing for your religion to teach. That people, by nature, are flawed, and just to get yourself away from that flawed nature, you need a leap of faith, jump into this religion, and as a result, we'll teach you the correct things using our own ethical commandments. Finally, we talk about how the nature of sin itself, you need constant vigilance, you're being saved by taking on a religion. They never respond to any of these points. I think it's really important. The whole argument that David is giving here is that where the sin is coming from is the fact that people are feeble, that people are inherently flawed. And regardless of how little or a lot of social forces are out there, they're naturally going to make these mistakes. That's an argument for saying that they're naturally flawed. The last thing David talks about how it sort of creates an incentive for people to join your religion. You need a belief, you need an act of faith. No religion in the world sort of proposes what they're doing. And the reason for that is otherwise it wouldn't really be a religion that works. Because it would just be sort of a pagan set of philosophies. People just stray away from it. Here are like the philosophical rules in which you should obey to avoid straying from what's actually good. A religion, the whole point is that you need to join that religion to teach you to become a good person. That's fundamentally different from a set of philosophical principles. So what they're advocating is sort of like a moral philosophy that says people are good by nature, and like here are the ways to prevent yourself from straying from the good. What David and I are actually arguing for what religion actually is, an ethical set of rules in which we're trying to get people to obey by teaching them that the only way to get on the correct path is by joining religion, and that only happens on our side. We're very proud of
Thank Jason for his very eloquent remarks, and now invite the member of the opposition, Mr. Dave Schoonover, to deliver the last introductory speech of the round, not to exceed 8 minutes.
Most august panel for judging this round, members of this most august house for being here to listen to us debate. Good friends on side government for a fantastic case. I really, really do enjoy this. Rob for debating with me. We've had a fantastic term. He's been phenomenal the entire time. He's going to give another great round. That said, I think actually Jason gives us a fantastic point earlier. He says, look, you're inherently rational. Self-interest often hurts people. It drives them apart. It causes them to backstab their neighbors, try to get the one from their friends, and do things that are generally not acceptable in society. Understand that there are lots of reasons why this is a very naive way of looking at rationality. We actually have to understand that in a lot of cases, cooperation with social goods come from the fact that we work together. Part of the reason why social contract theory is so compelling and it's been reconstructed so many times is we understand that when we're not stuck in the throes of things, when the world isn't bearing down on us, when the facts of the matter aren't influencing us to make one decision or another, when we don't have to decide whether it's my pocketbook or my neighbor's pocketbook, it really is better if we all work together. It really is better if each and every one of us is better off, because in the long run, society is safer and richer and better off in general. So why is it that this works for morality especially? Because we understand that it's not just about the short-term goals. When you're selecting a religion, you're saying it's really important for everyone to work together. It's not about self-interest where it's up to you to redeem your own flaws. It's up to you to ensure that you fix yourself so you can go to heaven. It's a broader philosophy. It's an idea where God put you here as a test, perhaps. God put you on earth in a place where there are many dangers and pitfalls. You're all here together as brothers to make your way through the trials and tribulations of life. And in the end, each of you should do the best that you can to earn your place in heaven. But overall, that doesn't just come from redemption of yourself. It comes from helping your fellow man as well to be as good as you can. When all of your fellow man is evil, when it's by their very nature that they're making mistakes, and not because they were tempted into it by a test of God, you have no reason to help them up when they stumble. It is only your salvation that you care about. It's only important to you that you overcome the trials. But here, every time you make the world a better place, you set up a society that helps the poor. You make it so that others don't have to resort to crime, that man has a reason to treat his neighbors well,
then you have created a religion that helps raise everyone up together. It's someone that cares about every person. And we think this is a philosophy that's extremely important. This is something that a truly good God would want. There's no reason why they would make man evil if it causes division. And I think there are a lot of cases where they propose division in this round that we're about to get to. What's the first thing that Rob tells you? Limitation is bad. If you're inherently good, it's important for you to develop your goodness. There's a creator God, and this is extremely important to understanding the nature of morality in the world. What's the response? Look, original sin is kind of like natural evil. If you have original sin, which some religions believe in, then this is, sort of the same thing. Like, actually, I think this is just wrong, right? Original sin says you just have a net, loss to start with, right? You got to work your way out of a hole a little bit. The nature of evil, your inherent self being evil, is not a net loss you have to work your way out of. It's saying that when you make decisions, you're predisposed to make evil decisions. In fact, all of their analysis that they give you is about how you need religion in order to make the right decisions. This is a huge problem. We don't want to be teaching people that those who aren't part of our religion will naturally make the wrong decision. We don't want to teach them to divide the world into the privileged, the chosen of God, who know the one true path to salvation, and those who will necessarily fail without enlightenment, without the grace of God, without the ability to be redeemed. Understand this pits man against man. It's not a rational decision. It's a necessity on their side of the house. Only those who believe can be saved. And that's a huge problem. The second argument that we have, is about the nature of God. We say, look, it's really good if you, why would you worship a God that creates evil creatures? Their response is just, you need a leap of faith. But look, to people who aren't already in your religion, leap of faith is not particularly compelling, right? They're preaching you're evil, you can't be saved, you're fucked right now, but if you just believe me that you're evil and you can't be saved, you'll be fine. This doesn't sound particularly good to me. If I've lived a life of good acts and I want to bring in the people who have actually worked hard in their life to do good things because they'll teach others to do good things, you don't tell them they fucked up by helping all their friends. That's the worst way to bring them into your religion. No thank you. Next thing we talk about, also understand that we have a good reason to say that man does bad things. Though God may have created the world as a test, it may have been important for them to prove your moral worth. You may have been created good, but that's not enough. In the face of temptation, you need to show that you're willing to make the right decisions. There's two things that are important about this. On our side of the house, we don't drive a wedge between those who make the wrong decisions and those who make the right decisions. If you make the right decision, even in absenta of the religion, you're still a good person, right? This is a good thing, and this is what we should be teaching our followers. But moreover, we think that just generally this is the right way to conceive of your path through life. Not that you're always going to fuck up, and that you should just maybe go kill yourself because you'll only keep making the wrong decisions if you're not part of their religion. But rather that everyone should work to be their best for moral perfection, to try to make your life as good as possible, not just overcome your natural tendencies. We think morality is an important goal of being, in certain ways it teaches you how to live perfectly, and on their side of the house, it just teaches you how to live adequately. The next thing Rob talks about is about the interactions of people in society. He says, look, why treat people well? The only response is that people still have value. You'll want to save them. This is just an assertion, Mr. Speaker, and members of the panel. They tell you that people don't intrinsically have good natures. They, in fact, are predisposed to evil. That sounds to me like, naturally, just by themselves, people don't have value. You don't have a reason to save them. We give you not just the fact that they're good, but people who do good works are also worth saving as well, and that you should want to reach out to them. But there's a bigger problem here, right? This points towards how they want to treat people of other faiths. They say that if you're not on our side, you can't possibly be saved. Only God can give you grace to bring you to heaven. That's a terrible way to treat other people. If you're in the majority, it means oppression and racism necessarily. It means those who don't buy into your faith are making a mistake and don't deserve the same sort of good lives because they themselves aren't making the right choices. This is a terrible thing. But moreover, we say no, save yourself. We think that the important part here, and no thank you, is that understand, look, you can't grant other people enlightenment. It needs to be learned through works. You yourself need to understand why it is to act good. On their side of the house, there's no reason for you to teach other people about this. Yeah, they were born evil, but you only care about saving yourself. On our side of the house, we co-opt everyone together. It's important for everyone to understand that you should save your fellow man because they were born good. They deserve to be saved. They're able to be redeemed. They say, the next argument we give you is why convert, right? You're evil, we can help. This just doesn't sound particularly compelling. Like, I understand that was funny what Jason said, but really, the argument was not, debate is the same as religion. The argument was, when faced with two ways of persuading someone, telling them they suck is the worst of the two, telling them they're good is the better of the two.
Let's look at examples of real-world religions that are of the two kinds. On your side, you have a sect of Buddhism no one's heard of. On our side, we have religions like Islam and Christianity, the most popular religions of all time, that taught these individuals that they were actually naturally single unless they took out their
I disagree with the categorization of all sects of Christianity as on your side. As we tell you, I don't think original sin theory fits into your model. People aren't evil, they can be redeemed. They were made in the image of God, in His likeness, able to be treated to others with respect and dignity. I also think that just generally, it's not, no one teaches particularly that man is evil, except for some sects of like Gnosticism that say God is evil. Like, I don't think there are any clear examples on either side because the world muddles things up. The next thing we tell you is that forgiveness is very important. Now, all men can be saved, the world can just trick us. They give the frailty analysis again. I think they just didn't listen to Rob. Look, if you're frail, that means that you may be making mistakes. The world is evil and tempting you. If you're naturally evil, it means that you're making mistakes and it's your fault. You were born that way. You need to do something to overcome it. This is a huge problem and it doesn't give you a reason to treat your fellow men well. Like, what if there are demons in the world, right? Like, they could be tempting people into great acts of wickedness. It's not like plants are evil, right? It could be a wholly supernatural test, and I think that's a problem. Next, understand, they dropped the babies are evil analysis, right? I think this is really important, right? Babies aren't evil. That's awful. Everyone go, oh. Last thing we say is understand that division point's really important. Rob says a lot of the justification for the terrible things that have happened in the world is because some sort of natural division, intrinsic division between man. Some people have the ability to be saved and others don't. Preaching that as part of your religion is a problem. Treat everyone, even the non-believers, like they have dignity and the ability to, and moral worth. We think this is terrible. Let's go case side. They say, look, man isn't someone, but man isn't perfect. You need someone to look up to. I think either way, God is your role model. Whether you're made in His image, a piece of His perfection, or whether you need to look to Him to save yourself. We say, though, everyone has a reason to look up to God on our side of the house. Even if you don't believe in our religion, you can still respect the fact that we say everyone is equally good. No man is divided out from the rest. Everyone is equally deserving of salvation. The next thing we tell you is that you just need a leap of faith. I've already addressed this, but I think it's bad to reject those who reject God. I think that in and of itself is enough to win us this round. They say there's the nature of sin. Religion is necessary to redeem myself. But that's their great mistake. It actually shouldn't be that religion is necessary. It should be that acting moral is necessary. Insofar as your religion incentivizes acting moral, that's a good thing. But we think people who choose to act moral on their own, say they haven't even heard of your religion before, still deserve redemption, still deserve to go to heaven. Next, they say, like, look, if man is good, where does sin come from? We tell you it's the temptation of the world. They say that's just naturally making mistakes. No. First of all, I already told you, what if demons are tempting you into making mistakes? That's not part of you or part of the world. But moreover, I just think a world of temptation is understandable. It's something that people can latch onto rather than some intrinsic part of their soul. The last thing they say is, no religion teaches this. This is the "cause I say so" analysis, right? Like, everybody's doing it, why don't you side with us? Well, first of all, I don't think this is right. I mean, I actually think Christianity flows to our side. But moreover, like, you still have good reasons to believe that your religion is going to be the right way to go about things, that all people are equally moral. You should treat each man as your brother. Everyone has equal worth. Everyone can be saved. It's for all of these reasons we're very proud.
Okay, that said, now the constructive portion of this round is over, I invite for some floor speeches, and I see some willing volunteers. All right, anyone with a floor speech for God? Yes. Is anyone? No. Oh yeah. No. Oh, would you? No, you. Well, I just said, does anyone have a floor speech for God? Yeah. Oh, all right. You're here. All right.
seems as though the necessary extension of Opp's argument that people are inherently good is that people are created in the image of God. Thus, the following people are in the image of God. I'll explain it inside. I was going to describe why not, apparently. Yeah, me too. Rob Glunt. He's sneaky. His little sister shoots hobos in the night because he told her to. Jason Wen. He's greedy. He continuously tries to resolve debates on our team and problems by offering to pay people off. As an arbitrator. Ben A. Bear, also greedy. I have nothing else on him. Lil Newman, he just sort of leaves a bad taste in the back of your mind. So did I miss everything? Oh yeah, Dave Schoonover. I've got some stuff here. He went way over time. David Kimel frowned when he sat down for like the last time. He mentioned the social contract, but it was ridiculous. Also, David Kimel, who lied to me when he got my expectations up that today was daylight saving. Only then to be wildly disappointed that this is not in fact the case. It's not tomorrow. No! Terrible. So essentially, we go around here. Who's left, right? I mean, I guess Ariana Kelly's pretty good. I'm sort of good, but then I just gave this speech. Also, I also go wildly overtime, and she calls everybody stupid when shows his head, which is probably right. She beat everybody on their LSAT. So then we have a couple other people left, like Andy Brink. I think he's actually a generally good guy. And further, I was just telling you out of Bonneville, Adam Neer has like taken bullets for people. Neer! Forgot the fact that it's in the whole brand nice team. But then I remembered that burn ball guy used to also lead a bunch of cases about killing babies. That's a bad shame. I would say Rob Bonds is good, but then I hear he's incredibly wealthy, and it doesn't seem like he's giving money away. Remember, if you vote for them, it means that all of these people are created in the image of God. Thus, God looks like Alex Blankenship or Rob Glunt. This is a terrifying thought. Don't vote on this. We're very, very
That's a hard act to follow, but I think Andrew can do it. I'll put your drop.
This isn't funny at all. I don't know if I'm actually kind of serious. Is that the spirit of these things? I'll try. Okay, I just want to say first of all, Gov gave these definitions of religion that never were questioned, which I think that we just kind of take for granted. One of which was the whole point of any religion is to correct for our sin, which I think at one point to be stated as religions try to drop people toward morality. Was somebody say something? And so I think that really constrains you. Well, first of all, what happens? And so what? As a result, both sides are either arguing that morality is prior to religion, in which case, what's religion supposed to do? Self-perpetuate itself, just make people join it, or to get people to, or they argue that morality is contained in religion and just ask them to behave well. But I think that one negative consequence of this is that you end up sticking to. I'm just reading off. So you stick to a paradigm of religion which just really benefits them. They can keep on, studying like, there's never been a religion that said that men were good. But let's break out of these assumptions. Let's say that religion is an ethical system, not a moral system. There's a difference, right? I think there was a movie, a really funny one, like a lecture or something, where like the girl said it's an ethical system, meaning that it does not condone certain actions that people do, but it tells people what to do. So if man is good, then they say men can create morality, and if religion is an ethical system, it tells people to obey that morality. I'm going to start reading now because I don't know what I'm talking about. I hope it makes sense to you. So for example, if we're deciding the ethics right now, why should we assume, like everyone else is doing, a Judeo-Christian type of ethics? Well, I hear a lot of stuff about original sin, being saved by God, being created in the image of man, God. I mean, that makes no sense at all. And love thy neighbor, frugality is good. We just assume these things because we have this morality. But, like, how do we come to this? Did it have to come because of religions? Why not as a religion that people enjoy? One opposite vibes, one that says, you know, you can enjoy yourself. You can have, you know, be lustful and eat all you want to. But also, because men are good, they can create a morality which will temper these things themselves. And I think you get rid of all these self-hating mentalities or some people might have. And also, this is really what you might call humanism, right? Like, it describes me. I don't believe anything. Like, I'm Jewish, but like, I believe I get my ethics from somewhere else. And like, I kind of do what I want to, but within the limits that my conscience provides, because I'm essentially good. I might have talked too long. Thanks, guys.
We lost my sense. Yeah.
Okay. You're here.
So, I know I just gave up to do a crossmatch, but it's going to be an option. Alright, so for some reason, yeah, shut up. It's going to be even worse than the previous one. For some, both of ours would be pretty good.
Also in God's image.
For some reason, like, Kimel gets up here and goes that, like, all Western religion is based on people being inherently immoral. And, like, I know I'm kind of vapid and I don't know a lot of stuff, but the one thing I know is religious scholarship, and he's just wrong. You shouldn't have clapped for that. But what Rob tells you is that Eastern religion is actually much more similar to what they're trying to argue for. And I'm sorry, Glenn, but, like, Eastern religion, because you're from China or wherever you're from, Eastern religion is, like, reasonably fucked up. So, like, a long time ago, and Rob mentioned this kind of like Mahayana thing, right? A long time ago, there was this big debate that I think he's alluding to, called the Tainted Seeds debate, where these two guys, like Saicho and Kukai, essentially fought it out over essentially this question, right? Whether people are fundamentally unable to achieve enlightenment, or whether some people are able to achieve enlightenment. So, like, Kukai was like the Brian Fletcher of debate, and like Saicho was this kind of bumbling, jovial idiot, like, I don't know, like the Rich Powell of debate or something like that. And like, the judges still picked up Saicho, right? And this kind of created like an interesting paradox. Like, why did they pick up Saicho? And like, the thing is that Kukai's district was really fucked up. Like, you had all these priests come down once in a while and like slice people up with sakashana swords. And like, the reason they did this is because they didn't believe in people having inherent worth. Like, this is really important because this is what these guys are arguing for, right? And like, the people who weren't sliced up often went into the woods and like lived by themselves. Yeah, I know it's not funny, Rich, but it's like, it's knowledge that helps their side. So like, all the people went into the woods and like, and totally retreated and became lost in society. And so I think when you examine why they did this, you kind of get to Wen's point, right? When he says that, look, we'd rather declare people to be inherently immoral and have them work against their most foremost inherent identity. But we would say, and I think that Dave makes this point really eloquently, that when you teach people that their foremost persona, that what they are at inside, in the most innate sense, is ugly and wrong, and that existential value is maintained by expressing an incredibly artificial identity, expressing something that isn't who you are, then you really undercut the true catharsis that comes from religious transcendence, the kind of spiritual communion of the self with God. That kind of thing is what they achieve on their side of the house, because they actually allow for your foremost potential to be achieved and related to in a spiritual sense. Their entire case relies on you wanting to be moral. But you know what? If I'm inherently evil, I wouldn't want to live a moral life, because that would be to deny my foremost identity. I think that you should want to live a moral life, and I think that you really haven't addressed this foremost point. For all of these reasons.
No more. All right. All right, that said, time for rebuttals. Okay. I now call upon the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Robert Glunt, to give the final LOR of the round.
Here. Thank you, everyone, for a really interesting round. I just want to kind of like point something out here. So there were two opportunities in which the audience can kind of go, aww. The one was about like babies dying because they're evil. The other was David Kimel frowning. I really have to question like the inherent morality of this audience, given they found that David Kimel frowning was worse than like babies being evil. I think it shows that you guys really do need religion, and that's what you're going to get on our side of the house. So the first thing that I want to talk about, I like Kimel. I don't want to see him frown, but like I'd rather not see a baby die, right? So the first thing we want to talk about is how this round sort of, in a lot of ways, becomes about nothing, right? Because on both sides of the house, you're basically stuck with the same world, right? Because like you're still dealing with human beings, right? And most human beings are like at least a little bit immoral, do some immoral things, and like your religion is trying to like make them a little bit better, right? So on their side of the house, they argue that people are inherently evil, and then MG they just sort of becomes flawed, which means they're is sort of susceptible to evil rather than like inherently really, really wicked, right? On our side of the house, we argue that they're inherently good, and they typically tend to accumulate a little bit of evil. Understand that like on both sides of the house, these things are very, very similar.
Yeah.
So I think that when you look at Ox, which are very, very similar, like really very little clash between this round, you have to go with what he started with, which is, what is this religion and what are your goals? And there are two goals that he basically gave us. Number one is morality. You want people to act morally. And the second is it needs to be sort of like compelling. You need to convince people to actually follow this religion so they do act morally. So those are the two things that I want to talk about. The first thing is what convinces people. And I think we really win this point because we don't get a lot of analysis on their side of the house about why the things that they're saying, even if they're true and even if they're like fairly effective in a religious sense, are going to convince people to convert to your religion. It gets really under-addressed on their side of the house. We tell people that, we say that it's not very effective to tell people that they're rotten, awful, horrible, innately immoral people. That's not a very convincing sort of way in order to convince them to join your religion, right? They mock this and they say, oh, no, it's not about the debate team. But the whole point is it's a mechanism of persuasion, right? Whether they're persuading you to join a religion or persuading you to join the debate team, you're still trying to persuade people. They never respond to the fact that this is not particularly persuasive. If it's not persuasive, they're not going to even get into the synagogue or the church in the first place, which means they're never going to get this religion. That's bad. We also tell you that it's really bad to tell them that people who believe other things, like say their parents who are already dead, for example, are necessarily evil, right? That's not going to convince a lot of people to go to your religion at the point at which they have family, friends, other people who believe other things. If you're telling them that they're definitely going to hell, doesn't matter how many good works they do, doesn't matter how wonderful a life they've lived, they're definitely going to hell, that's not going to convince people. We think that's bad. But thirdly, we say that telling them that God created evil people is not an effective way of convincing them to like follow God's teachings, right? Why follow God if He just filled the world with monsters, right? I don't see there's necessarily reason to do so. Or also, like, why not just do what He made you to do, right? He made you evil, maybe you should be. I don't think it's a very powerful argument for why you should be good at the point at which God made you evil. Maybe He has better judgment than you do, at which point you should probably act immorally, not morally, which they're trying to get you to do. The only thing they really tell you is that you need to make a leap of faith. This is their primary argument on their side of the house, that a leap of faith is important for religion. What we would say to you, Mr. Speaker, members of this panel, is that they're never going to make the leap of faith unless you convince them to try the religion in the first place. Maybe it's true that everyone who practices religion does have to take some things on faith, does have to believe some doctrines they can't necessarily find a rational basis for. But unless they're convinced to try the religion in the first place, unless they think that at the heart of the religion there's something good there, something that they're willing to believe, something they want to believe, they feel it's easy to believe, they're never going to be convinced to make that leap of faith. And if they really believe that that's important, I don't think they can get that on their side of the house. They never tell you why they convert people, that's bad. But the second thing we say is what convinces people necessarily to act morally, right? We say that by telling them that other people have inherent value, you give them reason to accord them certain levels of regard, right? If people are inherently good, I shouldn't be bad to them because then I'm being bad to something good. That's why, like, you should act morally, right? Because people have some kind of value. All that Wen says is, well, just say that people have some kind of other value. They don't say what that value is, and I don't think it's going to be the kind of value which is as easily accessible as the value that we talk about. If people are inherently good, if you sense there's some inherent goodness that can actually be redeemed, that's a good reason to act nicely to them. That's a good reason to try to redeem them. Saying that they have some value from rationality is just not as convincing. I don't think it's going to convince people to act morally, the point at which you're saying that anyone who doesn't follow your religion is inherently evil and can never go to heaven. But the second thing we say is just this, that telling them that other people who are not of this religion are inherently evil and who can never go to heaven and can never do good works is not just bad, it's quite honestly dangerous. We tell you that certain religions have used these sorts of policies to justify racism, to justify horrible acts of aggression, crusades, shit like that. All they say on their side of the house is, your religion isn't going to promote that. Yeah, that's true. The Bible doesn't promote racism. The Bible doesn't promote, crusades. But the fact is that people are going to take these doctrines and run with them, and the point is to tell people that this is an exception to the religion, that people are different, that there is clearly a divide between people. The people certainly not of your religion and of your religion. At that point, you do divide these people separately. You say that anyone who doesn't follow your precepts is necessarily evil. That's not going to convince someone to join this religion. It's not going to convince them to act morally. To the people that you say are inherent monsters, that's bad. We oppose.
I want to thank Robert Glunt for his very eloquent remarks, and I invite David Kimel to close out the 2004 bound round.
Smiling now. Mr. Speaker, thank you for calling me. True friends in opposition for a great outcome of the case. Jason, for being a great partner.
I love everybody. Thank you.
That being said, first let's address some of the new arguments that were brought up in the 12-minute MO. I guess I could call it an MO. It's more like a sermon, right? I'm kind of sad people call it me because I wanted to call him Father Schoonover. So the first thing that I kind of heard them say was a horrendous argument. And that's that we should be able to be you can be good without the religion. Remember what the case is. We're not arguing here like, is man naturally good or naturally bad? We're arguing you're founding a religion, what should the religion want you to do? You know, you can still find salvation and still be good without our religion? Would that be a very compelling reason to be joining that religion? Not necessarily, right? I think that's a little bit problematic. And then he had a really silly argument where he started talking about, like, am I a little bit percentage good or a little bit percentage bad? This is the thing, right? We're not saying on our side of the house you're like Hitler forever or Gandhi forever on their side, right? What we're actually saying is just this. We're asking about like where the ledger starts. And what we're saying is we think that at the beginning you're a little bit below the ledger and you need something like, I don't know, religion to bring you to the top part of it. And you guys can see why it's good for religion to teach that. But then they make a really bad, another new argument. And that's the idea of demons. These demons on your shoulders that are tempting you into sin. So you're good, but it's the demons that are bad. Oh boy, is this bad for them. First of all, this goes against all of their arguments that they tried to make. Like, you don't want to vote for our side because that means God made evil. On their side, God made demons. God's so great and wonderful, he was writing like tempest all the time, right? But secondly, I want to do the analogy of health again because I think this is pretty important. I think it's woefully under-addressed by them. If I'm an individual that keeps getting sick again and again, or keeps listening to demons in my head again and again and again and again, like on my own devices, that means there's something wrong with my immune system. That means there's some kind of a frailty about me. At that point, it's really good for a religion to say, we're the tourniquet. Come to join us and we're going to be helping you. It's not as easy as just joining the religion. You have to join and make the leap of faith, but also act well and act correctly. And you have to make this step first and actually join the religion. It might as well be a pagan philosophy on their side of the house, right? So that's very important. So that being said, let me crystallize. The line is actually pretty clear-cut. The first thing I want to talk about is man is evil. Cross-apply the health analysis, right? When I look in the world around me, I see really bad things happening all the time. And it's very, very problematic, right? But the thing that we're saying on our side of the house is we're actually being very, very redemptive toward man. And we're saying, listen, you're not perfect. You're not God. There's something that's actually greater than you that's out there. It's understandable that these really bad things are happening. You need some help because you have this flaw. Come and join our religion and we're going to be giving you some way to actually go against that flaw. Why is this also very, very good? Because a point that they just don't understand. Because once I join that religion and I want other people to come join with me, just as Jason said, I have a real incentive to do it at the point that I know that everyone else that's out there is on the lower side of the ledger, right? I want them to come and join into my religion and so that they can see the truth of God. It's actually an incentive for me to be really kind and good toward them and actually try to persuade them to come and join me. Your side of the house is really stupid because it says it should be a religion that says you don't even have to be a member of the religion in order to be good. But I don't understand why any rational religion would actually be expounding that sort of philosophy. So recognize again, when we're talking about man as evil, look at actually the religions that became very popular around the world. It's religions like Islam and the original Christianity that told people the world around you is very, very sinful, but come and join us because we're giving you a unique opportunity and a unique window on the world that's going to be a corrective for these different flaws that are there. They assert on their side of the house, well that's kind of, people are going to be bummed out because you're saying that they're bad. But the fact of the matter is, you're not saying that they're bad, you're saying that they're flawed, but you have a solution for their flaws. What's part of that solution? Part of the solution is the leap of faith, and this is the biggest point of the round. What's the difference between the religion and the philosophy, and the ethical philosophy? It is the idea of the leap of faith. It's not just good for me to act good. That's not enough for me to get into heaven. I have to have the spontaneous leap of faith and actually let God into my soul. Because that's the only way that I can join the religion in the first place. That's the only way that I'm going to be able to be good. So that's very, very important, right? And they even acknowledge that on their side of the house with a lot of their rhetoric when they talk about things like people have to learn through good actions. That's like also true on our side of the house. Learn through good actions. You have to be purging your soul of this idea that's there constantly with an idea of constant vigilance, right? Because we're always inclined to these simple possibilities, which is very, very problematic. So actually, there's this difference on our side of the house is that they're expounding ethical philosophy. We're actually expounding ethical religion. The only other harm that they might still give you that you guys might buy is this is like, ooh, like Hitler, because everyone else is going to hell. But this is the problem, right? Because look at what Jason and I tell you. Your religion, it's actually good to think that you actually have to be a member of that religion to go to heaven. Like I have to baptize my kid in order for the kid to go to heaven. It's a real incentive for the religion to continue, as we tell you, right? So this is the idea. You're not going to be cruel to other people of other religions. You want them to go toward your side. You want them also to make this leap of faith and actually to let God into their souls. Why is that a unique benefit on our side of the house? Because on their side of the house, the people are good anyway. They don't even have to be in the religion. But on our side of the house, you're actually winning converts because you're going out there and these people need God to be able to go to heaven, to push them toward you. That's like a crystallization about the idea of behavior. Recognize a lot of their rhetoric is just patently wrong. Like, look at people like the Pope, right? The Pope, even though he believes that people do have the innate sin that's in them, even prays for people like Hitler. And the reason that he does that is that he really wants the possibility for people to open up their hearts to God. Because that's the way they're going to enter heaven. That's what a religion should teach. That's how it's distinct from a philosophy, which I don't really think that they get on their side of the house, right? The test that people should pass, part of it has to be joining the religion. And that's a unique thing that they give you on their side of the house, because you might as well not join it on their side. That being said, the last thing I want to talk about is existentialism, right? This is an important point. I think that it's good for a religion, ooh, there was the knife. It's good for a religion to actually give me the idea, it was a butter knife. It's good for a religion to tell me that there's a God that's above me and I should look up upon him with awe. I think it's good for a religion to do that, right? Because it's putting you in this idea that you have to submit yourself to the God, and it's encouraging people to go toward the religion. It's good for a religion to tell you you must have this leap of faith in order to be good. You can't just act well. If you just have to act well to begin with, why would you even join the religion, right? Because it might as well be a pagan philosophy. It's not just acting moral. You actually have to be joining this religion. So at the end of the day, what do we give you this? What do we tell you? It's not around about are people good or are people bad. It's what the religion should be teaching. Why do we give you unique benefits that this is what religion should teach? 3 reasons. 1, you're getting converts on your side of the house. You have to teach other people the religion because this is going to be the path to God. On their side of the house, why even bother? Because the people are good anyway and they can go to heaven anyway. Secondly, you don't want a philosophy, you want a religion. The distinction is the leap of faith. You only have that leap of faith as God is greater than you and something more than you, right? And the third, this existential wonder, right? And the third idea is this, the idea of hell. It's actually liberating for me to think to myself that the reason I see so much badness around me is the idea that man might